Happy Monday, everyone joining us from around the world. I'm Shannon Ewan. I'm the Managing Director of ICAgile. For those of you who are maybe new to ICAgile, we are a certification and accreditation body operating in the business agility learning space. And we exist to advance the state of agile learning globally. A couple of ways we do this are by facilitating thought leadership, which is part of what will come up today in today's conversation. Also ensuring top quality learning experiences through our arduous accreditation and instructor authorization processes, and creating competency-based learning journeys. And the competency-based learning journey that we're going to focus on in today's webinar is enterprise coaching for agility. So as you might be aware, we did launch our learning track on enterprise coaching for agility back in 2015. It has taken some time to create the expert pathway for that. It is a very complex discipline that we're looking at, and this committee has worked together over the last year and a half to actually create that pathway. And that's what we're going to be here discussing today. We want to talk a bit about really what is the discipline of enterprise coaching for agility, how does it differ from team coaching, why is it so important in our world today, and what is the impact that we really want this program to have. And so before we get into our discussion, I wanted to invite our committee members who have worked tirelessly on this particular set of competencies to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their experience and what drew them to help create this program. So with that, I'm going to invite Kevin Callahan to start off with the introductions.
Cool. Thanks,
Kevin?
Shannon.
Yeah.
And I know that you all came here to not hear us talk about ourselves, so we'll try to keep this part brief and get to the meat of it. So as Shannon said, I'm Kevin Callahan. I live up in Maine, in the northeast corner of the US. Let's see, I've been a practicing Agilist for over a decade. I've been in software development and leadership development for over 2 decades. And several years ago, I realized that we were having a problem. I was having a problem at the organizational level, that there's a missing piece between what we would call organizational development and agile practice. And so several years ago, I started exploring what that would look like, and went to graduate school and got an advanced degree in OD. And when the opportunity to join this group and help define some more concrete competencies around that was really what I wanted to help do. So really excited to be here, really excited to have been able to work with all these folks, and I will end with that. So pass it on to whoever is next.
Nice. Thanks, Kevin. So my name is Marcia Acker. I'm in Maryland, just a little bit north of the Washington, D.C. metro area. I had the fortune of being involved when we created the Agile team coaching track a number of years ago. Facilitation and coaching are, I describe them as sort of part of my core DNA. I've been in the space of professional coaching now for about eight years, I believe. What drew me to this track is a passion and experience that I have around working with systems and taking a behavioral lens to change at both a leadership level, leadership team levels, and then at an organizational level. So I'm excited that we're launching this. I'm super grateful to this group of people that if you don't know them, you're going to get introduced to some of them right now. I think it's been an opportunity for us to apply kind of what we espouse as we created this. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Marcia. This is Michael Spade. Good morning or good afternoon. I have been, in the Agile space for about since the year the Agile Manifesto was signed, with a really big transformation back then, when it was really insane to do scaled Agile, sort of. And since then, I've been involved in a lot of transformations. I've started up the Agile Coaching Institute with Lisa Atkins, started up transformation with Michelle. And am starting some new things now. My concern has always been because I didn't come from the Agile world or the IT world particularly. I came more from organization development and psychology and coaching and leadership development world, was always to bring in ideas that we needed in the Agile world to do the things that we were doing, organizational transformation essentially, but we didn't have the training or tools to do that. And this, for me, this track that we've created is a culmination in a lot of ways of doing that, of bringing in disciplines from different places outside the Agile world that will really help us, I think, in doing this enterprise coaching thing that's sort of way beyond what we've done before in terms of team work, work at the team level. And I'm really happy. I love this group, and we have a really good time together. And we've had some struggles, but we're really happy with this product. So, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Medor, and I live in Richmond, Virginia, in Arizona right now. I got interested in this track, or interested in this organization a while back, basically because my background has been working with organizations in change, in acquisitions and mergers prior to even Agile. And so for me, it's always been about the human aspect of change. And so I studied organizational behavior for a couple of years and took on the professional coaching world prior to coming into Agile. And as I began doing Agile transformations, I began to see the need to bring organizational change if we were really going to do Agile transformations into the space, and be able to deal with the complexity that exists in organizations right now in a very different way than just at the team coach level. And so I created an enterprise coaching for agility workshop a few years ago. And so I've been working just with that workshop for a while, and that's kind of what got me interested then in being involved in, how do we get to a deeper level of competency in this track. And so I've been really privileged to work with this group of people and to get to know some of them that I did not know prior to this committee. And it's been a wonderful experience. And I think somebody has said this, but I do believe that we have used all of the tools and techniques and mostly ourselves as instruments in even creating this track. And so I'm really excited to share about this today. And that's me. And I think Simon's left, yeah?
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, everyone. Yeah, my name's Simon Powers. I'm from London, as you might be able to tell from the different accent than everybody else. Different part of the world, so it's my afternoon here, so welcome you all. Although that didn't sound very English. So I've been working in organizational change in one form or another for about 20 years, not all with Agile. It's probably been since about 2006. My background was technical architecture, so building stuff for 10,000 people or more, and realizing that it's really hard, and mostly it kind of didn't work. And so really struggling with that pain of trying to make big systems actually functional, and being so frustrated with the dysfunctions that we see in organizations where we've got so many good people working so hard. And this is what really got me into this this whole organizational change thing. And been working now, like I say, for 20 years, different industries, worked from everywhere from public, private sector, charities, banking, finance. And it's the same the world over. Different places, we're all struggling with the same thing because we're all humans, trying to figure out how we organize these big projects with so many people. So professional and systemic coaching is a real key part of my journey, and really employing some of these techniques that we can use and learning about humans, but on a great big scale, and seeing how we can work that. I founded AWA 5.5 years ago, which is one of the fastest growing and arguably one of the largest communities, Agile communities in the world. And we've been running meetups all over the place, trying to get as many good folks to come and speak and share knowledge and learn as much as possible. Anything to raise the bar of what we're doing in organizational change, to try and take away some of the pain. And I've been training ICAgile classes for about 3 years, something like that. This group has been, for me, the culmination of all these things. All of the knowledge from all the different clients and things has really been poured into this. And that's really kind of where I feel like I've brought my kind of wisdom. It's that's what I've brought here. And it's been an absolute privilege and a huge learning journey for me to learn from all these great people. It's been a fantastic experience. And appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of our committee members. We really wanted to make sure that everyone on this call knows and understands kind of what was brought to the table for this, and getting to know the faces behind it as we launch this program to the world. So thank you for sharing all of that. And we're going to jump into some of the questions that we have heard from the world and from our community around this particular track. And we're going to have a discussion here, and then we are collecting questions along the way, and we will have some time for a live answering of some of the questions that come through. So please do continue to share your questions in the Q&A. And so I want to really ask the question, the why. So, why did we do this? And what is the current landscape around enterprise coaching? And why did we really feel the need? Why did this group feel the need, the calling to define the discipline of enterprise coaching for agility?
Cool. Well, I can start us off, and then others can jump in. So I started when I was telling you a little bit about myself. Like we was part of the group that defined agile coaching at the team level, which got launched back in 2011. And one of the things that was happening is we defined like what would it look like to coach a team. There was this whole bucket of stuff that started getting created around. It should really, where are we talking about kind of self as instrument? Where are we talking about large scale facilitation? What are the kinds of things that somebody would be doing if the larger part of the organization? How would they be intervening with that part? And we really started to notice that, hey, that's actually a whole different separate track. And so that was one of the first times that this notion around agile team coaching and enterprise coaching emerged. So it's been in the ICAgile system, that's been part of our conversation for a number of years. Shannon shared with you that the enterprise coaching learning objectives got launched in 2015. I think what's emerged over the last few years that we certainly all aligned around was, I think when they first got launched, there were not a whole lot of people talking about what does it look like at the enterprise level. We're still trying to sort out what does it look like at the team level, and what does it mean to be competent at a team level. I think what's really emerged is that organizations are struggling with how do I do this on a scale. Whether I've figured out the team level or not, I am looking at how do I change my organization, and really wanting to put some definitions for the community around what does it look like to be a competent enterprise agile coach. I think there's a real calling for that right now, and competency looks different at this level than it does at the team level. So I think for those of you who might have, if you're not familiar with ICAgile's competency tracks, welcome to this. And if you are, the thing I want to say to you now is that this competency and gate looks really different than the team gate. So it's different scale, there's different scope, there's different complexity. We're focusing on different things, but we really felt called to start to define some of the distinctions between what does it look like to coach a team and what does it look like to coach an enterprise. And more importantly, I think the biggest focus on this track and the competency level is yourself as instrument in this process. How the work that you do on your own leadership, on your own awareness, how that impacts greatly what you're able to do with leaders and across an organization to affect change. So, yeah. Anything you all would add?
I'll jump in with just a really quick and on there that I think certainly in my work I've seen, observed and had a lot of agreement from leaders at all levels that the context they're operating in are complex and getting more complex. And there seems to be a growing breakdown or gap in organizationally in the ability to respond to that complexity more than just react to it. And what does that look like to really be able to move with intention and choice and options through a growing landscape of complexity and uncertainty and volatility. So I think there's a really distinct call for this work that's getting louder at these days.
We certainly, and it's funny, we certainly are living that right now. We're having an international conversation around a virus and the impact it has on business and trade. So.
And I'd also like to add that I think most organizations don't actually, they don't actually know what an enterprise coach is versus a team coach, right? So there's they know they need something more than they have, they need more help. So there's the part that, you know, we need to educate ourselves in our own industry, and then we can help educate organizations on, you know, the kind of help that they need if they're looking for it to actually achieve agility.
Yeah, and Michelle, that's a great segue. We get that question often. There are a lot of companies embarking on journeys to business agility and hearing that they need enterprise coaching. What should these folks look for when they're looking to hire enterprise coaches?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in on that one. I think, I mean, this to me is the competences. So what we spent the last 18 months building are the competences of what we believe as a group is what it takes to succeed in business today. And when we look at where organizations typically are and where they've been, the problems they've been facing over the years, then these competences are designed or created such that if you follow and have these competences, you can move businesses forward, organizations forwards, such that they can face the problems of today. And so the key thing for me, as an employer, and we hire enterprise coaches in our business, in our consultancy, and also we help our clients to hire them as well. And what we're looking for is really people who have kind of had some experience of doing this before. That can be a tricky thing because there's a lot more demand often than there are people who have actually got this experience. And this is another reason why I think this competency set is so important, and the idea of having a cohort program which takes people through this competences is that people can actually get to experience and work with support as they're learning these new competences. Because you know, it is, like we say, an incredible big web and net of things that you need to know to be able to move an entire organization forward. No one person can really know all of that thing. So another key aspect of hiring is making sure that the person, you get on with them and they get on with the team and are able to collaborate really well, so they've got a very high sense of inner skill, inner workings. They've done work on themselves as much as they have with the knowledge and skills and frameworks of things on the outside. So having some kind of assessment on the inner work that somebody's done, just as much as the outer work in terms of their experience as well, is absolutely key. I think that some kind of coaching experience or background is absolutely important as well. And not that I really want to open this one up particularly, but just the appreciation that when we're talking about the enterprise scale, it's not good enough to take a framework and employ it on an organization. It needs to be grown from where you are to something which means something for the context of your business. And that takes time. Understanding that this person who's going to be helping you, this enterprise coach, this leader, this transformational agent, is going to be there for a long time, because it takes a while. And I'm sure there are many other things that I could add, but it's probably good to open this up to others as well.
I think for me, the biggest difference is that for an organization hiring an enterprise coach is that it's some part of it is your agile experience and your knowledge of how agility works, but some at least as big a part is about knowing how organizations work, how leadership it manifests, and how change happens within an organization. And that's a sleight of hand. That's so confusing on a certain level, because we don't expect, normally we would have hired an OD person, an organization development person, to do much of what an enterprise coach does. And that's like confusing, because it's not just about the agility side, it's about all those other sides.
Yeah. One other aspect I'd also say is somebody that has also worked, the organizational change community, the agile community, as it were, is a huge, generous, incredible phenomena that is completely global in scope. Everything from the team to enterprise communities all over the world. And I would hope that anyone operating at the enterprise level who is looking to change an organization, potentially with budgets of change in the regions of millions and millions, that they've done something with the community. They've done something to contribute back to the space that they're in. If you've got to that level of organizational change along that journey, one would hope that you've been engaging, or one has been engaging with the wider world at large. Would be a key thing for me.
And to get concrete on this, what are the competency areas that we've defined for enterprise coaching in this space? And those are informed by what we believe that organizations should look for when hiring enterprise coaches. So I wanted to open up that discussion about our process and what we arrived on and why.
Yeah. Well, let me start that out by saying that there's 5 areas, overall areas. There are about 20 specific competencies divided into those 5 overall areas. So the one I want to mention first is not the first one on the list, but it's developing self as a leader, which is about the fact that I think everybody on this committee believes that if we're not right, if we aren't self-aware, if we don't have our own development program for ourselves, we're not going to be able to do the kind of change that leads to an agile transformation, that leads to organizational agility. So that's sort of starts for us. Secondly is guiding that it's a change process that we're going through. So you have to know how to enter a system, how to assess a system, how to implement a change, how to create a change strategy and a change plan. So you need to know a fair amount about that. You want agile or enterprise coaches to understand and be motivated toward developing leadership within the organization at all levels. So know something about leadership development, know something about leadership at different levels, how it shows up differently. To obviously know things about organizational agility, things about how you create adaptive structures, or how you measure it, how you do product innovation, how you work with complex adaptive systems. And finally, that you have what we call coaching range, which is your ability to manifest, to show up in different ways. So the coach competency model shows up here, being able to facilitate, but this time at big level, being able to teach or to create training programs altogether, being able to do professional coaching, being able to work with systems as well as individuals and at people at different levels. So did I miss anything?
Ethics, maybe.
I think
you got all of them.
Ethics and things. I'd say I think and having the right kind of ethics that go along with it. We're in a very powerful position when we're looking at organizational change, and having the right kind of ethics which are going to maximize the success for ourselves and those around us, and sort of do no harm kind of thing as well. Other than that, I think that's awesome. That was everything.
Yeah. And one of the things I see as different about this program than maybe some other programs that are out there about enterprise agile coaching in particular is really this emphasis on the inner work and developing self. And Marcia, you use the term self as instrument. That tends to be one of the maybe most often overlooked elements, and also potentially one of the hardest things to convince people that they need. Not only organizations bringing in enterprise coaches, but also folks who are on that learning pathway. And I think we've got a number of those people here on today's webinar. And so I'm just curious, maybe what advice do you have for people about that part of the learning journey?
Yeah, so I would say that the word journey is a key, Shannon, because as Michael was saying, is if you don't work on yourself, it will be very difficult to work with other people. And the reason that's so, that doesn't always sink in for people right away. But the reason that's so is when you get involved in enterprise coaching, you are coaching an entire system, a whole system, all the way up to the senior level of leadership. And as you move further and further up the organization, it gets more complex, and you have to deal with more complexity, and you have to have different types of conversations at the higher level of leadership than you have at team level. And those kind of conversations are more tied to business value in the organization. So like, for instance, right now I'm working with an organization here, and they're not concerned about at this level, the CEO and the senior level, they're not so much concerned about talking about agile practices as they are talking about agility and how do you tie some of the agile practices to that, but how do they work on their culture? How do they work on the mindset? Because that's where they're getting stuck. And so the ability to talk with leaders and people across the organization about culture and about mindset requires you to actually understand how you can help people move from a siloed position to a place where you're actually talking and it's not an us versus them or me versus you scenario. So you have to be able to see other perspectives. You have to be able to see your own way of seeing yourself and be self-aware to help other people do the same thing. Otherwise, you don't have the inner experience needed to help other people do that. It's not a book knowledge thing, for instance. So that's why it's really a journey, and it's not just taught in a 2 or 3 day class. Anybody add anything to that?
I think you summed it up well.
Yeah.
One question came through that I wanted to go ahead and bring forward because I think we definitely have the right committee here to answer this. We have a question from Edward about, would you say that the competencies we've defined in this work correspond to the transformation mastery domain from the X-Wing framework, so the ACI framework, or is there a different relationship between the two? So are we defining competencies squarely in that transformation mastery, or what is the difference there?
I'd say we're activating the entire framework. So I think from my point of view, there's an overemphasis perhaps on the transformation mastery, or I don't know about overemphasis, but there's a big emphasis on that. But there's absolutely business mastery and technical mastery, not nearly as accentuated because we don't see them as lacking in the competencies of enterprise coaches. And like I said, there's all 4 of the, teaching, mentoring, professional coaching, and facilitating. Anybody have a different thought about it?
I'd agree with that. I think if anyone knows that framework, it'll be you, Michael. So, yeah. So,
nobody wants to engage in a debate there.
Plus leadership. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's maybe, see if I can find language to express this quickly. It's a question of scale in my mind, at least. That the X-Wing as a reference point for team coaching is incredibly relevant, and it scales up, I think, really elegantly to the enterprise scale. And things might look a little different content-wise. For instance, like helping a team at a team level work through impediments and whatever they need to do to increase their performance some of those patterns are the same at the enterprise level, but the scale does throw some pretty substantial wrenches in. It's really, really different to work with, say, a group of 7 to 10 people versus a group of 150 to 250 to 300 people or even more. So those are some of the areas that we've talked about. How do we help people build those skills and competencies?
And let's actually talk more about that, because what we're seeing with the ICAgile pathways is it's a very common journey for folks to go through the team coaching track, or what we call the agile coaching track, and then want to continue along the enterprise coaching for agility track. And we have a couple folks on here who have been heavily involved with both of those. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how do we really differentiate a team coach from an enterprise coach, and what is that pathway that we want them to take beyond team coaching?
So I think that's me.
Go for it.
I sort of already went a little bit on that, but so team coach is primarily concerned at the team level, right? And a lot of team coaches get involved with the program a little bit. But when you're talking about an enterprise coach, you're talking about moving to work with the whole system in that enterprise, the whole enterprise. And so that path requires you to develop a different skill set, which are the competencies that that Michael shared with you. So an enterprise coach, their professional coaching, for instance, moves to just professional coaching at an individual level, to even, more advanced at the individual level, but then at the systems level. So being able to work with a whole system. And, yes, this isn't the OD world, but we went into agile transformations. That's where our industry, that was our path. And so when we did that, and a transformation is an organizational transformation. In the OD world, that is a very big thing, and it requires mindset and culture shift. So having said that, if we're going to do agile transformations, and if we're getting involved in business agility and those areas, then team coaches have to also grow their capacities and their capabilities to work at an enterprise level with systems complexity thinking, systemic relationship work. So without that, you're going to have a difficult time working at the senior level and across all the boundaries that exist in an organization. So yeah, it's a very different, it's some people think, I've heard before that team coaching is working with more and more teams, more and more companies, more and more teams, and then then you're an enterprise coach. But it's or you work at the program level, but it's definitely working all the way up to senior level leadership and helping senior level leaders and coaching them. So to me, that's a very different skill set, and one that does take time to build.
The other thing I would say about it, as you were talking, Michelle, is at the team coaching level, you see plenty of enterprise issues. You get hit in the face with them all the time, and you try to influence them, but you're doing it from a team-centric point of view. And it's different when you shift your gaze to the organizational system level, and that's your scope, as opposed to you're a victim almost of what happens at the organizational level. So it requires a different kind of chutzpah, quite frankly, to see that that's where I'm focused, not the team level per se.
Yeah, and it is like it's like you're transcending and including. So as you go up, team, program, then you're up portfolio to enterprise level. It's not like you're forgetting about the teams. You're still there to guide coaches with teams. So, but now I think that one of the biggest things is that you have to have a mind of systems thinking, because you have to really see the whole system and all the complexity at work, and kind of understand all the way down to the mental models that exist in the system. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think to build off of what Michael was just saying, we talked a lot about in this competency, enterprise coaches would be working with people at a much more senior level, executives in the organization that were able to influence that larger scale org change, and ability to apply coaching, but at an executive level. So executive coaching looking slightly different than just down at the team level or individual coaching.
Yeah, I guess also another aspect which is changes is the relationships that you maintain and keep. With a team coach, typically you spend a lot of time with the same 7 people, and 7 or 8 whatever people, and you get to know them really well and have a very big impact on their lives and the way that they're working. Whereas at an enterprise level, often you don't see the leadership team every day, all the time. They're busy people doing things all the way, and you get to know a lot more people in a lot wider scope, but you get to know them less well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've that's something which I've noticed that some team coaches, when they start working at high levels of the organization, struggle with. They miss those relationships. And so one of the things as moving into this larger space is just to really try and figure out what is it that you want in your day-to-day. Do you want to affect a lot of people but not know them that well? Do you want to get to know people really well and affect them deeply? But there's, it's a smaller scope. There's like lots of different factors which I think that people don't perhaps notice until they work at the different levels.
Mm.
And I just wanted to respond to when Michael was talking about the competencies, we did get a question about the availability of those. These will be coming available on our website very soon. Spoiler alert, there's actually a lot of new stuff being launched from ICAgile this week. So definitely stay tuned, but you will get the actual list of the competencies, the areas, as well as the names. So for those of you who are looking for that. Also wanted to, this is maybe combining 2 questions into one. What advice do you as a committee have from maybe your personal experiences of transformations? Maybe share, if you're willing to share a failure and how that helped your learning. And then along with that, maybe what advice would you give to somebody who wanted to embark on a journey of building these competencies? They're all connecting with their failures right now, so we'll take it.
I'm just trying to pick which one.
Right.
Just doing that's the triage, right?
There's a Zen saying which says, best not start, but if you do start, you better finish. Once you start on this journey of self-development and learning and growth, you realize that it really is just never ending. The depths are really, really deep, and the relationships that you build and the connections that you build are they're hard work, but they're worth it. And that's something which that's something which I think always stays with me, the fact that this is something that we are doing which is doing good in the world. We're improving the way that people work. We're improving the way that they connect with themselves and they connect with their work. And the world right now needs a new way of working. We all need a new way of working. Most people are not happy at work. The types of problems we face, someone mentioned the virus earlier on, and we've got all sorts of things, climate change, all these kind of things. These are new types of problems. And these types of problems are just the massive problems which reflect some of the smaller problems which we face in our organizations, these complex adaptive problems. And we need a new way of thinking about ourselves and the way we're thinking about work if we're going to survive. And what the work that we're doing here is, it sets a benchmark for what it takes to work in this new world, what it takes to succeed. And looking at these competencies, these are the seeds, these are the ingredients for working in this new world. And that's what it means to me. It's something which it's going to make a difference. It's going to make things better.
One thing I could share to your question, Shannon, I mean, there's many, but one thing that comes to mind is having worked for many different consulting companies, agile and not agile. I think, when we go into organizations, and many times, these contracts are sold beyond beyond, we're not involved, or those folks on the phone, if you're not involved in that aspect of it. You show up, and what has been agreed to with the client is not necessarily something that you fully align with, you're not in integrity with. And so I think one of the things in the past that I learned is that don't go in and just nod your head and go along with something that you wouldn't have signed yourself, and you don't believe in doing it the same way. So designing an alliance really consciously, no matter if you were there for the contract creation or not, but really designing an alliance with an organization when you walk in. The reason I think this is so important, it's not just for our own integrity and our own love of our work, but it's because, agile transformations, the buzz is all the failures of them. Well, then we have to get real, and we have to say, this isn't how it's going to work. And if you want this to work, then we need to start talking more about, some other things, and design alliance around that. Mm-hmm. That'd be one takeaway for me.
Yeah, Bill.
Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
Building on Michelle's point, I don't know about if all of my errors or mistakes, but most of them have been obvious at the very beginning. So when I want too much, or when I am too arrogant that I believe that I know the answer for a client, then I ignore the signals that say this client is not ready for whatever it is. And when I pay attention to that, I'm in alignment and I'm in integrity, and things go well. And when I don't pay attention to that, they don't go well.
And that's, I think, germane to a question we got from Sunil. It's talking about how most of the time the journey, especially with large enterprises, can take maybe 3 to 5 years. And however, the execs are in a hurry to see results more quickly than that. And so what advice would you have, or what competencies are required to really manage those expectations, to reset unrealistic expectations, is how it's phrased?
Yeah, so I'll quickly jump in on that one. So this is something which, asking that question in a way, it's like how long is it going to take, is kind of sort of belays a kind of way of thinking. And if we're looking for, the question is, how long is what going to take? Because what is it we're actually doing? Who cares if a business is agile, right? Well, we want better business results. We want better businesses. And if we're thinking about when are we going to get a better business, well, we can get a better business tomorrow. We can start with small steps and experiment our way to better organizations. And that can be very quick, very short. We can do very quick and easy things to make things a lot better. And so, it may take years before we get this idea of agility, but we're not looking to get agility, so we don't need to ask that question in a way. I think that what we're looking for, organizations that can continually adapt to changing environments. And I think that that's an ongoing process that kind of never ends.
One of the competencies that we've defined is around guiding the change process, and entering the system and then staying engaged in that system, and sort of always contracting. So I think that, Shannon, some of your question is pointing to what it brings up for me is that there won't be any prescriptive, there's no prescription in what we are going to release on the website about how to do this. So for those of you who are disappointed about that, welcome. and that it is, part of our job as we are coaching in a system is to continue that conversation, to just be looking at, I get that's where you want to be going. Here's the facts, and here are the data, and here's what's happening right now. And how can you continue to be in that conversation with executives, because it's helpful to know that that's what they'd like. And then there's also, I think, a realization of what's happening in their organization. So, as it would show up in this track, you'll see it as part of, to be competent in that, this track would be looking for what is your way of how you engage with an organization. How do you enter that system? How do you stay in that conversation with leaders? What is your process for doing that? What's your intention behind it? So it will point you to things that should be happening, and it will create a lot of space for it to be done the way that you would do it, as long as you're clear and intentional about it and kind of covering some of those aspects.
And I'll throw a couple thoughts on the back of that. I'm really enjoying all these questions that are coming in, by the way. So thank you, everyone who's been asking those. And I know that there's a couple of ICAgile folks answering them behind the scenes, and we're tracking them.
We're answering a few of them now.
Yeah, trying to adapt to them as we go along. So, I wanted to reiterate one of the things Simon said, that this is from an organizational perspective about, achieving organizational goals and business goals. And, certainly at one spectrum, maybe that's just mere survival. And at another end of that spectrum, maybe it's fulfilling a really deep purpose, and there's a whole range in there. But helping, and Michael said something about this too, like helping an organization and its leaders understand why they're asking us or inviting us in, I think is really, really critical. And some of the biggest failures that I've been a part of, when I've asked that question, why are we here? And we don't know. Like the coaching team often doesn't know. And it's like, well, what was in the contract? Like, what did they sign? It doesn't really help. How do we know we're making progress? How do we know we're moving in the right direction? When we have that level of ambiguity, it doesn't necessarily work with us or in our favor. So one of the things that I've really strived to do is to help clarify that, and tread that line of helping organizations make sense of where they are without telling them what to do, and without wanting what I sense is beneficial for them more than they're able to want it for themselves. I've definitely gotten into some really frustrating moments and just undermine my own effectiveness when I want things more than my clients do, and I'm wanting them to change more than they're willing to. And those are some just really hard kind of paradoxes and tensions about this work of how do we keep transparency in that, and how do we help the people we work with and the companies we work with and the organizations we work with balance where they are and what they're willing to do and what they aspire to, and are those things in alignment or not, and is it worth investing in this kind of work? It's not cheap. Those are all really hard questions, and what certainly I think we're intending to do with this set of competencies is to help guide people to get a little more effective with that. I'll stop there.
A bit of a tangent, but still quite related. We have a couple of questions about the collaboration between team coaches and enterprise coaches, and maybe what your thoughts are on that, and also potentially having a team of coaches at the enterprise level. So just curious if you have any immediate experience with or responses to that.
Well, I'd never do this alone, personally.
Well, we have a team right here.
Call me crazy, but so one, I would always partner at the enterprise level, both with other enterprise coaches, but also with team coaches. I mean, they're not separate things by any stretch. They're separable, but they're not, they highly overlap and influence each other. And just to pick off a question that I saw, and I would also, if you have an OD person, on the staff, I would certainly be partnering with them. It's not a competition with the OD person. And in fact, I've done that before, partnered with an OD person, and it's great because they get what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is partnering with the OD person, and HR. We should be doing that as well. In terms of the team to enterprise coach, there's a part of the competencies that we've outlined. It has to do with mentoring and developing, and so I think that's also an area for enterprise coaches to mentor and develop team coaches if that's the path they want to go. So you're looking to develop a community map, a transformation community map, and what that looks like in the organization, and that could be enterprise coaches and then they're kind of working with and mentoring and overseeing team level coaches that could be. But yeah, I would work totally together with the team level coaches, not separate.
And to also have that the other way around. So the enterprise coaches mentoring the team coaches, and also the team coaches can mentor the enterprise coaches, because when I was an architect, we used to say, what's a group of architects? So it's an argument of architects. And the same can be said for coaches. And I think that the biggest advice that I've got is use the tools of which you are asking your clients, the people that you're looking after, whatever, the people you're serving, the same tools, team alliances, work out what you want to achieve, objectives, what's your vision, understanding what's going on, all those kind of personality skills, and working out how you work together is really key. Because sometimes I think that we coaches can get together and then we've got all these amazing tools and then we don't use them. And that would be my advice: just make sure that we know how this stuff works, so make sure that you use it on yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Nice. And so I'm going to bring up the final audience question before we start signing off. And there are still a number of unanswered questions. I just want to reassure everyone who's on here that while this is a launch, we are launching this program via this webinar. This is the beginning of a lot of these conversations. So this is not going to be the only chance. We do intend to continue this discussion more broadly over the coming months. So just last audience question is around what are some examples of ethical considerations that you put into practice around enterprise agile coaching?
Well, we've been talking about a lot of them, like aligning what you want to do and what you're willing to do with what the client wants to do, and whether you can actually help them do that. So for me, it's completely out of integrity to allow a client to pretend that something's going to happen that's just it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I guess another one would be being asked to be the expert to solve all of their problems when that's not what's needed, and it's actually unethical to assume that stance that you know better than them about their business. That would be a big. We talked about failures earlier on. I think certainly that's a one that in the past I have fallen into. I hope I know better now. Don't be the expert.
No.
We were talking a little bit about this before, but knowing what's sort of in your wheelhouse, what you're capable of, and being really aware of that, and reaching out for partnerships in other spaces where you might not have as much expertise. So I think partnering, there's a lot in this track around competencies. And so I think naturally people will be strong in some, and there will be others where we each will have places where we rely on partnerships and others. So.
Yeah. I think this idea of transparency is really, really critical. That we need to be willing to model. The moment we enter a system, we become a part of that system, right? We don't get to have this sort of external perspective where we get to look in from it. So the moment we are invited in, we're now in there and interacting with it, and it's interacting with us. And so as part of that, I think for myself, I can say it's really important to model the kinds of behaviors and the kinds of thinking that I would like to impart. And that includes humility, and that includes vulnerability, and that includes courage. And that looks like saying, look, I don't know what the answer is to your question, but if we, to Simon's point, let's use the tools that we have at our disposal. Let's bring it back to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, and design some safe things to try that might move us there, regardless of scale. I think that there's a real ethical hook into that of, not pretending to know things that we can't, and standing in that when you're expected, especially if a senior executive, like a C-suite person is asking you for an answer, to be able to have the courage and the strength to say, I don't know, not because I'm not a competent professional, but the answer you're looking for is not knowable in that way. Let's talk about why, and let's talk about what we can do. I think those are really important pieces.
Absolutely.
Shannon, can I suggest we prioritize the question of how the heck people get this implemented, how the expert gate works?
Sure. So how do people?
Because I'm assuming some of these people want to know how would I become an expert?
Yes. So in terms of next,
I know one person.
in terms of next steps, the way we're looking at this right now is that this is a journey. And what is a bit different about this track from some of the other ICAgile tracks is that we're seeing that the evidence that we need to observe to ensure the competencies are met needs to be observed over time. And so the best way right now is to enroll in a cohort program, and you will be able to see it actually, if you go to bit.ly/enterprise coaching, that'll be your quickest way, but you'll be able to see our enterprise coaching pathway there. This is a new program, but more programs will be coming available and will be running in the next year or so. You do need to start out with the knowledge-based certifications, which we call the ICP-ENT, so that's Agility in the Enterprise, and the ICP-CAT, which is Coaching Agile Transitions. In some cases, those are embedded into the cohort programs, and in some cases, you would take those classes separately. It will depend on the member organization who is providing them. But that is going to be the pathway. Like I said, we do believe that this is a journey, and we believe that the cohort model is the model that's going to be the richest for the participants, the networking, the journey, etc. So, I hope that answered the question.
It did. If you could maybe send out the link somehow. I couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, yes, we can actually get that to the group who registered Perfect. For their webinar after this. Definitely, like I said, this is a new program. We, as with all of our programs, we are open to, we rely heavily on your feedback as participants and as member organizations. So that door is always open. The best way to get that to us now is learning@ICAgile.com. And I would ask for a little bit of patience there, just because as I mentioned, we are launching a number of things right now, and we want to make sure we're listening to everyone's feedback and coming back with the clearest answers possible. So that's really the next steps piece. I know that we have hit our time box, but we've still got some folks here. So before we sign off, what I'd love to give the panelists the opportunity to answer is, what is the impact that you hope that this learning pathway, that this set of competencies will have on the world?
Well, I want to jump in and say, we haven't said this, but we've been piloting in the Expert Gate program, Transformation has. So I've been working with a group of people, and I would say that the biggest impact that so far that this cohort has had on them is in their self as instrument. And going in, they didn't actually think that was the thing that they would be focused so much on, but they have seen hands down that that's the leverage, and that the more they work with themselves and how they relate to change and working with organizations and change, the more impactful their work is, and actually takes them away from their own status quo results as a coach to more transformative results.
I want to build on what Michelle just said, because if I think about what led me into this and wanting to do this work, I think when we launched the team track, one of the things that moved forward was the concept of these different competencies around professional coaching and facilitation and mentoring and teaching. And I think the thing that this track adds that I think that track didn't quite nail as much is the self as instrument. And the critical importance of what it's like to do your own work. Because I think once you take that step, for anybody, and I can speak to this because this once upon a time was my thinking, that I get the self-work, just give me the framework, the tool, the process. I'll get to the self-work later, but if you could just help me now. Boy, have I learned the hard way that it's so much easier. And the self-work isn't the easiest way to start. I think it's possibly why it might get pushed off sometimes, but my hope is that this track does that, that it elevates the conversation around that part, that frameworks and models and tools support, but don't replace.
Nice, and I'll jump in. I don't know. I tend to operate aspirationally and at levels of from as close to purpose as I can get. So I have really high hopes for this work. What Simon gave voice to some of the kinds of challenges that we're facing as a world right now, and they're not small. And my highest hope and high dream with this is that we create a way for effectiveness in the face of these big complex problems, to work with them instead of just being worked over by them, and also, you know, that we create kind of a meeting place, so to speak, of like-minded practitioners. It's been absolutely incredible to work. You know, we've really been our own little cohort here for the past year and a half. We've been a team. We've kind of, you know, it's been full contact. We've bumped into each other and we've rumbled a little bit, and it's been truly life-changing. And I hope to be able to share that experience with other people in the professional sphere. It's been truly exceptional.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I think that it takes a long time and there's a lot of experience required to help organizations shift to face the problems of today. And I hope that this program gives people a kind of a shortcut. I mean, there isn't, you know, you can't shortcut everything, but at least when you've got everything in one place, you know the scope of what there is. And the cohort programs that were mentioned earlier are experiential, as we've hopefully got across by now. But it's not just, I mean, learning in a classroom is fantastic and you need the knowledge acquisition for that. But then to actually take that stuff and learn it through a supported cohort program with a set of competences which are all in one place in this huge, great big field, to put that down and to work through that competency over a period, supported by your peers in different organizations, that's a shortcut. That's powerful, and that's why I want to do this, because for me, like, I want to remove some of the suffering. There's so much suffering, and just to be able to have something which can shortcut that, to get more people involved at the enterprise level, to shift some of the things that are going on, to make the world a better place, and I think this program does that, and I've been honoured to be part of it.
All right. Well, you can.
I'd say, sorry.
No, go ahead, Michael.
I'd say the impact I want this to have is a sense of sobriety in the industry about what an organizational transformation is and what it takes to get there, both on the part of the coach and on the part of the client, and to not pretend that it's an easy thing that everybody's going to do, because everybody's not going to do it.
Yeah, well said.
Very good advice to wrap up on there. Not an easy journey. And like I said, you can learn more at ICAgile.com. And also there is a book about this coming out soon, is there not?
What book is that?
I'm not sure. What book is that, Michael and Michelle?
Let's see.
Called Agile Transformation.
Yeah, so be looking for that in the next couple of months as well, for those of you looking to learn more. And like I said, learning at ICAgile.com is the right way to continue the conversation with us. We'll also look at some of the unanswered questions that have come in and look back with folks offline. And so as we're wrapping up, I just want to express ICAgile's gratitude for this committee and the work that's been put into this, and also for everyone who took the time to attend this today and is really interested in learning more about the discipline of enterprise coaching and seeing what you can do to change the world. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.